Hi students, this video lesson is going to take a look at industrialization in America. We're going to do a very brief overview of some of the factors that allowed America to industrialize rather quickly and become one of the most powerful economies on earth. So if we focus on our standard, as always, as we go through our American history course, we're looking for the rise of corporations, heavy industry, mechanized farming, and technological innovations transformed the American economy from an agrarian to an increasingly urban industrial society. So as we go forward and look at industrialization in America, we want to keep this standard in mind, and we want to look for some of those key words as we go through this presentation and some of the ones to follow. So let's focus on this idea of moving from an agrarian society to an urban society. Agrarian, of course, means people live out on farm areas and farmlands. They grow their own food, they produce most of their own things, or they trade with local people. In the 1800s, most of Americans lived this type of agrarian lifestyle, with the majority of the population living in farms. By 1910, though, the population is going to shift significantly as we see a mass movement of people living in a mostly urban environment. And that's where the industry is going to develop, and around that industry is going to be large cities, a topic that you may have covered in your world history class. So how is America going to be industrialized? Well, like any country that industrializes, America has the factors of production. And number one, it has a tremendous amount of natural resources, everything from timber to copper to iron to coal, and especially to oil. America is a pretty vast country with a lot of different varieties of natural resources. Unlike some European countries that you may have studied about in your world history course, their resource was relatively limited and they had to import the things that they needed. The United States doesn't have to do that. We have a lot of resources right here at our fingertips, especially the resources needed to produce an industrial factory and industrial cities. So America is blessed with all these wonderful natural resources. And as the Industrial Revolution progresses, and as we see the importance of kerosene and then gasoline eventually, America has tons and tons of oil fields, not just on the eastern part, but in the southern part and the western part of the country. So kerosene and gasoline will be hugely important as we progress to the automobile age. So America has access to cheap natural resources, which is going to allow business to grow and expand quickly and cheaply. American business did not have to import resources from overseas, which is going to help keep costs low and profits high. And that's a really key factor. Without relying on other countries and other resources from overseas, prices in America can stay low. The second reason why America is going to industrialize quickly is because of its growing population in order to meet the demand of a very, very quickly growing population. By the time of the Civil War in 1860, the American population was around 31.4 million. By 1910, it's going to triple to about 92.4 million. That's just in the span of 50 years. So the population is going to grow quickly, and industry is going to have to also grow quickly in order to meet that growing demand. People are having larger families. That's one of the main reasons for the population growth. Improvements in living conditions and health conditions are going to lead to this. And it might not seem like that as we look at the living conditions in a lot of urban cities and the working conditions that people have. But overall, the health and welfare of people is improving. Food is getting better, medicine is getting better, lifestyles are getting better, and population is going to grow due to larger families. The other big factor contributing to America's population growth is immigration, especially post-Civil War. As the Civil War ends and as this Industrial Revolution begins to boom here in the United States, it's going to draw millions of people from overseas to come here and take advantage of those opportunities. Between 1860 and 1910, 21.7 million immigrants are going to arrive into the United States, helping to fuel this huge population growth. And when people from overseas come to the United States, most of them will be settling in these urban areas, again, fueling this growing economic and industrial development. They're the ones getting the jobs in the factories. They're the ones working to produce these goods. And just a little side note, because we're going to talk more about this later, but immigrants are coming for what are called pull and push factors. Pull factors would be things that are bringing them to the United States, reasons to come here, better jobs, better wages, living in a free country that embraces rights, individual and civil rights, to avoid persecution that they might be facing back in their home nation, as well as wars and violence. And then there's the push factors, which would be the things that are happening at home back in their native country that are maybe pushing them out. And these two factors obviously coincide, right? What is a pull factor is usually somewhat of a push factor back home. Back home, there's limited job opportunities. There's low wages, there's limited freedoms, there's persecution, and there are wars and violence. So we know that many immigrants are coming to the United States for push factors, reasons in their home country, and then pull factors, things here in America that are desirable to them. Another movement of people into these urban areas to develop our industry is the fact that they're being replaced on farms by technology. So new farm technologies like the one seen here, this is Cyrus McCormick's Reaper, are going to replace the need for a lot of more manual labor on farms. Obviously, yes, we still need people to work farms, but technology is going to replace a lot of the work that was being done by hand. So machines begin replacing farm workers, and as a result, we're going to see a shift in population from rural areas to urban areas. So as families are sort of replaced as farm workers, they need a place to go, so they're going to go to the cities and they're going to get jobs, swelling and growing these urban areas, and again, fueling this industrial growth. Another movement of people that we're going to see is African Americans from the South. On our previous standard, we looked at life for African Americans in the South post-Reconstruction, and we know that it's not going very well. So we're going to see another population shift of people as African Americans are going to leave the South because of the violence and because of the segregation and because of the lack of opportunities. A lot of African American families were relegated to sharecropping, which kept them poor, provided them with limited opportunities. There's not much industry in the South. There aren't factories that are popping up all over the place that are offering lots of jobs. So moving up economically and socially in the South was very, very, very challenging for Black families. So what many of them did was to leave to go to northern cities like Detroit and Chicago and Cleveland and Pittsburgh and New York to find those opportunities. We're going to talk more about that population shift, but I wanted to mention it here. So there's a massive immigration into the United States, providing us with a huge labor force to work in our growing and developing industries. Urban areas are going to develop quickly due to those industries and job opportunities as cities develop around those factories and businesses and just grow almost exponentially. Americans are going to be moving themselves from farms to cities after being replaced by technologies on the farm, having to go to the cities to get new jobs. So as more people come to the United States, there's a higher demand for goods, which creates more businesses, creates more jobs, which then in turn draws more people here, which then in turn creates a bigger demand for goods, and it becomes this big, big cycle. So new technologies are also going to drive economic growth. As we're shifting from machines and industries powered by coal to now electricity, that is going to create a whole new set of industries and a whole new set of business opportunities for growth. So electricity is now king. It will be replacing steam and power. So we've got Edison and Westinghouse building electric light bulbs and generators and providing electricity to new homes that are being built. The development of electric generators and transformers are going to be used to distribute this electricity. It's going to speed up the industrialization process. It's cheaper and faster and easier than coal. We're going to see electric lights lighting up cities, which is going to create business opportunities to stay open later. We're going to see transportation like streetcars, and we're going to see appliances in the home like vacuum cleaners and washing machines and refrigerators. So the use of electricity is going to expand business opportunities. Communication like Alexander Graham Bell and the telephone and the Bell telephone company that will emerge from this is going to revolutionize communications, make it instantaneous, again, providing more opportunities for business. We're going to see refrigeration developed by guys like Thaddeus Lowe and Gustavo Swift that are going to provide refrigeration opportunities so that you can ship foods over longer distances and keep them fresh for longer periods of time, which sort of replaces your need to go to the market every day, which takes up a lot of time, where you can then ship goods across the country that would normally spoil without refrigeration. So that's going to be a huge game changer. And this refrigeration and this faster transportation of food products is going to help benefit people, right? They're going to have access to cheaper and healthier foods that they normally couldn't get. If you lived in the Midwest, chances are you didn't eat a lot of fish. Well, hey, now that fish can be put into refrigeration and can be put on a railroad car and be shipped to your city, which you could pick up at the local market. So better diets, more access to food, especially fruits, and proteins are going to help improve the health, which again helps our growing population, right? So access to reliable electricity is going to create new industries and new businesses. Again, we're not going into a deep dive here. Electricity is going to power the machines that would transform most industries, shifting from coal now to electric power. And electricity will improve and expand transportation as well as communication, which allows business to move faster. And then in these homes that are being wired with electricity, we're going to see new appliances, washing machines, like I mentioned, the typewriter, even other products, right? We're going into producing products that we don't necessarily need. The camera by Eastman in '88, the Dreyer brothers and their automobile in '93. So all these appliances are starting to be made available, creating new businesses that are mass producing goods, right? So we're seeing the development of these huge factories with hundreds and hundreds of people working on machines, mass producing these goods. So mass production allows us to make the same good, essentially the same way with the same parts, and make it really, really, really fast. So we're no longer making things necessarily by hand. We're making them mass produced with machinery, and that speeds up the process and also makes it cheaper. So new products create new industries. So every time somebody comes up with a new product, we have a whole new industry to support that, and more jobs, right? So new products create new industries, create more jobs, which fuels economic growth. Household appliances that are now available, like washing machines and vacuum cleaners and refrigerators, they're going to speed up work at home, which creates more leisure time. We'll talk more about this later, but leisure time means you've got free time, which means you want to do other things with that time. So that's going to create other opportunities. And this mass production of goods is going to lower prices and make it more affordable. So as all these factories shift towards the mass production of their goods, it's going to make them cheaper and more affordable to everybody, which means more people can buy them, which means you make more money. Now, who's driving all of these things? Who are the people behind all of it? Well, we need to talk just briefly about the entrepreneurs. And the entrepreneurs are those people that invest in business. They take the risk in order to gain the profit. They don't necessarily always have to be the inventor of the good, but they have to be the person that puts the money and the time into it to make that product a success. So we've got a couple of hugely important entrepreneurs here on the screen. We've got John D. Rockefeller of Standard Oil, Andrew Carnegie of Carnegie Steel, and Cornelius Vanderbilt, who owned tons of railroad. These are just three major American businessmen that we're going to bring up just briefly. But these entrepreneurs, these business owners, are going to reap huge profits. And that's going to be a problem as we move forward and look at sort of the negative side of the Industrial Revolution in a following lesson. And then lastly, we're going to see European nations investing heavily in American business. So Europe's kind of already been doing this Industrial Revolution thing. America's now catching up, and America is almost going to surpass them in many ways. But a lot of businesses actually benefited quite heavily from investment in European countries, providing us with the capital, the money to initially start many of these businesses, which then Europeans are going to also benefit from in terms of sharing profits. So that is, again, just a real brief look at America's industrial growth in the late 1800s. So here are some key takeaways to make sure that you keep in the forefront of your mind as we move forward. Industrialization increased significantly after the Civil War. Industrialization transformed the U.S. from an agrarian nation of mostly farmers to an industrialized and modernized nation of workers in urban settings. A couple of key factors that help support our industrial growth: The fact that we had access to natural resources right here in our country that were essential to developing industry and didn't have to rely on imports. We have an expanding and growing population, which created a large workforce as well as a high demand for these goods. New technologies and inventions in electricity especially, which are going to help fuel the growth but also provide opportunities for businesses to expand and produce more goods. And then entrepreneurs, the people behind the scenes who are investing in these things and creating these opportunities for this growth. Number 4, America's population is going to shift to these from these rural areas to urban areas due to immigration, but also migration. So immigration, people coming into the country, migration, people moving within the country. And then the mass production of goods is going to make our products faster, cheaper, and more available to the public. So that's a very basic look at America's early industrial growth.